Okay, I should take it. No, no, you're there. Okay.
I'm here. I'm here.
So, the history of this, I think you know something about, which was there was a book that never got correctly translated into English that Bhikkhu
Okay.
Buddhadasa did way back in the 70s. And
Hmm.
now Robert is doing the English language translation for those portions of the book that didn't get done.
Great.
But in the process of getting ready for doing that, he reread the English, comparing it with the Thai, and is recognizing, oh, it actually needs almost a complete redo. And that possibly the history behind that was is that the monk who actually did original translation was a Bangkok monk who didn't spend much time with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa.
Okay.
So he was just doing it as a translation project rather than something deeper.
Mm.
But anyway, through Robert, that book was made available. It's actually on the internet, even the part that's missing. And so I decided to go through it to
Mm.
see kind of some of the stuff that Robert was talking about.
Hmm.
And
What was the title of the book?
this book is Anapanasati Bhavana
Uh-huh.
by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, published in Thai in 1976,
Hmm.
and will eventually get published into English.
Great.
But some of it has been translated, like I said, so we have maybe about 300 out of 500 pages.
Okay.
And since then, there's been a number of books that have been written on Anapanasati by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, but none of them to the depth or breadth that this one is. This is like the big kahuna.
Amazing.
And that um, there's a whole lot of things to say about it, but the important one is that when I got into reading the part about Vedana, some things really started to slip right into place in a really remarkable way.
Amazing.
And that I recognized that I had been teaching it correctly,
Great.
but that I wasn't teaching it with quite the right emphasis
Okay.
that it deserved.
Okay.
And that in another way of saying it is that I was teaching around it, but I didn't quite have the language that I needed to actually hone right in on it so that the students really understood basically the process that has to be gone through in this Vedana section of Anapanasati that very few people are aware of, especially at this depth of the level of exactly what practice is.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, in short, or in the beginning, as an introductory, we know that Anapanasati has 16 stages or 16 steps, and that they're broken into four groups of four.
Mm-hmm.
And that these four groups are the body, the feeling, the mind, and the mind's objects.
Mm-hmm.
And that in the Kaya Nupassana, it has the understanding of the in and the out breathing, and then the training for the body to wake it up, to become fully aware of the body, and then to tranquilize the body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most of the mistakes that people make is they think that they're to be practiced 1, 2, 3, 4, but in fact, that's not possible to have the body completely relaxed unless you get some other vital things relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, the best we can hope for is sleep, but it's still going to have all of those old things coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the normal way that I teach about practicing is in the regard of when the mind wanders away and sati occurs through right effort and right understanding and gladdening the mind and joy, we bring the mind back to the object. This is normally the way the teaching, and by doing so, I'm actually doing kaya. I'm actually doing the sita, the mind, gladdening the mind, experiencing the mind, recognizing that, and also changing the contents of the mind. But in that little scenario, it really doesn't talk about the Vedana directly.
Okay.
All right. And the Vedana directly actually is a process unto itself that is that's built into that little procedure that I've just given you, and that it happens, but it's not talked about. So now we're not only going to talk about it, but we're going to show how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
But first off, with the Vedana Nupassana, there are steps 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then step 9 is experiencing the mind in the sense I know the mind has wandered away from the object. So that's the first part of that. And then gladdening the mind, which is part of right effort, is
Mm-hmm.
step 10. But we don't talk about step 5, 6, 7, and 8. So let's talk about them now in order. Step 5 is called rapture in the English language, and we do not have a decent word for it. But in the Pali, they knew what it was, and when I explain to you what it is, you'll know what it is in English, and then we'll have to figure out what's the right word to use.
Okay.
After the rapture happens, then the next thing that happens is the sukha, which is basically in the way that we've been teaching it is that aha, I got you, is
Okay.
that when that is the pity, and then the sukha is the relaxation afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Another way of saying it is that the success is what comes with the pity, and then the satisfaction and contentment comes with the sukha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that this is to be practiced so that they happen fairly quickly in the mind as a process that you can see. That
Mm-hmm.
in fact, this thing called pity or rapture is a conditioning agent that we want to create so that we wind up in this state of sukha.
Great.
All right. And then in this state of sukha, which is now what we'll refer to as first jhana,
Okay.
because we're satisfied and the mind is fit for work and all of that kind of stuff. Now we're going to start working on 7, and that is to experience the mental formations,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
is exactly now back to Paticca Samuppada.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne is calling. I don't mind. If you don't mind, we'll just invite him in on this conversation.
Sure.
Had another guy who was wanting to get in, but he didn't try to call.
Hmm.
Hello,
Hey
Wayne.
guys.
I see you in the dark. We're already half into a conversation. If you don't mind, you can join in on it.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
So basically, what we're talking about within Anapanasati is the Vedana section of the Satipatthana. The 4 foundations of mindfulness is body, feeling, mind, and mental objects. And the
Mm-hmm.
normal way that we work is by having the mind concentrate on the breath. When we recognize that the mind has wandered away from the breath, then that's the waking up of the mind. That's sati, and that's also the experience of the mind in the sense of before it had wandered away and I didn't know that, but now it's wandered away and I know it. So it's a knowing or a waking. And in fact, I like the word wakey wakey. That's the best
Wakey, wakey.
word sati that I have.
Yeah.
It's just wakey wakey, yeah, exactly. And with that wakey wakey, that's that point in time is when that's the opportunity that we practice step 10 of Anapanasati of gladdening the mind, and that gives us the right effort
Mm-hmm.
that we need then to come into the winner's position.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the normal way that I teach it. But in that regard, we're only teaching body, mind, and mind objects, and we're not spending a lot of time with Vedana. So
Right.
in this conversation, we're talking about Vedana and how it fits precisely into that which we were talking about.
How
Cool.
wonderful.
All right. So step number 5 is what is called piti, and is crazily, not just wrongly, but crazily translated into the English language words of rapture, making it extremely difficult for students to really understand what we're talking about. And that rapture then becomes the conditioning agent for step number 5 to 6, which is sukha. Now, sukha is a state that is akin to, let us say that rapture or piti is the success, and then in the next step of sukha is satisfaction. And I'm going to give you a few examples, but I want to go through all 4 of them and how they work together. The next, the third group, is once we get into that state of satisfaction with the mind fit for work, we're going to put it to work. And what we're going to put it to work in is to start watching the bodily formations, watching the mental formations. But in this regard, the word mental is actually, we're talking about feelings. So in the Thai language, they translate this as jai for the heart, sankara,
Right.
as opposed to sita sankara. So these, and by the way, it seems proper, since we're already in this Vedana, we're talking about feelings. We're talking about how the old feelings from the past come up and flavor the moment. And then the next one, and that's the job that we have, is to begin to see how old stuff flavors the moment and keeps us out of the here now and keeps us living stuck in the past based upon the way that we felt in the past. And then the next step of the procedure is to, they use the word again, this crazy word, tranquilize these emotional baggage. We could call a sankara the emotional baggage. So how do we let go of that? How do we free it up? The answer is we don't pay any attention to the past anymore. We stop stirring it up. We start living more and more in the present moment, so that it's new stuff that we're using for processing rather than old stuff that's laden with feeling. So
Real
this
stuff.
is, pardon?
Real stuff.
Yes, right. So we want to do the real stuff that's new and real in this moment, rather than dealing with the things the way that we used to. A really clear example of that is one of my friends. I think that you know him, but we don't ever do anything on the video together. And we were discussing what you and I, Danny, have already started discussing, and that is when one becomes a Dhamma teacher, there is a danger that the teaching of the Dhamma becomes more important than the experience of the Dhamma.
Right.
And that we have to avoid that. That's when the people start to try to use Dhamma as a livelihood, try to make money off of it. They
That's
start
exactly
to
what I was
dedicate
thinking.
themselves.
Yeah.
They dedicate themselves to the Dhamma, but in the process of that, they begin to lose the Dhamma. So long as you keep the process of practicing the Dhamma and living the Dhamma and doing the Dhamma for your own self in this present moment, that will assist you in being an authentic teacher that can actually do some good.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start to want to be a teacher, you start to destroy that very gift that you're wanting to give, and that's the freedom from want. And now we want to give freedom from want. We're okay. So that urge, though, is very deep. So we'll have to start watching for those moments when it becomes important for me to be a teacher, as opposed to enjoying being a teacher. As soon as it becomes important and I've got a message to say and all of that, I've stepped too far out.
Yeah.
I'm back in the old sankara of wanting things we don't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back now for a major review in detail. The first thing that we need to do is we need to define pity.
Mm-hmm.
Because so far I've been very careful to not define it.
Mm-hmm.
So now the big moment, but before we do, I'm going to give you both an opportunity to define it in the sense of the way that you see it. Because Wayne, you've already got an idea. What is rapt? What is pity? What is the step 5 of Anapanasati?
I know pity's related to joy and joyous energy. The way I kind of see it, because of my experiences, are um, it's that energy, but the energy, it's like in your body. It's when it's running through.
Okay.
When it's running through, like sometimes there's blockages, and I think that's what I'm
All right.
experiencing is as bodily movements.
So far, you've told me several things, and the most important thing that you showed me is that you're not sure of what you're talking about. You're grasping for things, but that you did relate it to joy, but you don't quite know how to do that yet, and you're looking for other Western words like energy and that sort of thing. Danny, your turn.
Well, joy was the first word that came to mind, but we speak about joy relative to step 10.
Yes. So rapture must be something else. Pity must be something else, especially since in many those who have gone across the fence into Hinduism a bit, they call it Kundalini or a rising energy.
Yeah.
All right. So let us talk about it in the sense of, and I'll use this word right off the bat, a peak experience for the human.
Uh-huh.
That peak experience for the human that the human really, really wants. Now, let me give you a whole bunch of examples. The first example I'm going to give you is the 100-yard dash. The guy that's about to win that race, and it may be, in fact, for the gold medal. It doesn't matter what. But the thing of it is he knows now he's close enough to that finish line that he's going to win this race. It's mine, is basically what we're talking about.
Success.
Now, success, precisely. And what is the feeling that comes with that success?
Elation.
Is that elation, exactly, ecstasy,
Yeah.
the feeling of having gotten it.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Another example would be, and this one is not quite as strong as that, but imagine a real estate lady who's been working for months on a sale of and getting, now she's gotten both the buyer and the seller signature. This is the day that she got it this morning. And as soon as she waltzes out of that meeting, which she can't hardly, once she's got it signed, she wants that meeting to be over so she can get on her cell phone, call out all of her friends. They're going to have lunch, and she's going to parade around that restaurant, pumping her fist, yee-haw, and she wants her friends there to enjoy that excitement, that elation, the very, very best there is for that real estate lady, okay? This is the kind of thing that we're talking about that I recognize that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was making an emphasis on. That's very important that we're missing it, because what we're basically doing is we're missing out on the intensity that we should be manufacturing for this.
Okay. Yeah.
You should. All right. So here's another example, and I like this one because I like to watch the expression on folks' face when I talk about it. There comes a point in time when you know that tonight you're going to get laid. When you know it's going to happen. Now, both of you know exactly that point in time. That's the yeehaw. That's the feeling exactly that I'm talking about.
Especially if it's a new woman.
Yes, that's the whole point. It's got to be it's got to be the first time. It only happens the first time. Exactly so. And the guys try to recreate that experience with porn, and they don't get it. They don't get that elation. They don't get that real strong dopamine hit that I'm talking about. Okay, so here's another example. At the football games, that
Yeah.
the score is done, and the guy will spike the football and jump in the air and throw his arms in the air, and about half the crowd throws their arms in the air with elation and excitement. The other team, the other folks, they throw their arms in the air, but they're thoroughly disgusted.
Yeah.
But it's all about these really, really intense feelings that we're talking about here, that when we use the word joy, we miss out on this intensity
Right.
that we're talking about that exists in the material world or in the world of sensuality. And that what we're looking for now is to change that feeling that has a lot of selfishness and self and all of that kind of stuff into a spiritual experience.
Right.
That is not related to the self, but it does have that quality of the intensity of the success.
Mm-hmm.
Because that intensity of the success is going to actually be that which gives the success, is the intensity of the feeling of success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That this is something to be. So it's not just merely gladdening the mind.
Yeah.
The gladdening the mind is the guy who kicks this football over the goal line. That's the rapture. It's the win. I can do this meditation. And the Buddha talks about that in the sutras, and it's really hard for us to understand the kind of joy that this stuff arises when we know for sure that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean that stuff out. This is championship work that we're talking about. This is really getting her done. And we know we can do it. And that self-confidence comes. This is the feeling of rapture.
Right.
It's the feeling of success. It's the feeling of, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a feeling that has to be manufactured over and over and over again, because why? What have you been doing all of these years? You haven't been practicing being totally successful at the top of your game. You've been playing the game of loser.
Yeah.
And not only that, but then the loser is the one that hopes for these peak experiences, but kind of settles without getting them.
Or suffers in hope of one day getting them.
Bingo, got you. Got you, Danny. And I've been telling you all along, no, you can, whatever it is that you're looking for, you can manufacture that for yourself. Well, now we're actually defining the intensity with which that's required.
Yeah, wow.
Because once you have that pity that you can begin to control, so that it just, your whole body begins to bounce with it. It is an energy. You're absolutely right, Wayne. But now you understand, not only is it energy in a vague way, oh no, this is the stuff that makes you pump iron in the air. This is the real deal, the real McCoy, the real kind of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Now, the next part of it is, because that success is so important, is that it melts then from piti or rapture into sukha.
Mm-hmm.
And that sukha is the satisfaction. This is great. Now, with this, in the way that we're practicing this rapture and this sukha, which is that state that we're talking about, these are now the collection of the jhana factors that create first jhana.
Great.
So that the mind is sharp and focused and relaxed and successful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then if the jhana factors leave, then what happens is that normally a thought will happen. And if we're not aware of that thought to keep us come back immediately, the thought then will become something that we become attached to, and we'll go off with it. Now, normally the first kind of thoughts that happen are the thoughts that are coming out of the old Sankara. So you'll have a thought about the past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so your job then is to become on guard for not letting thoughts of the past come into the mind. That while we're practicing at this intense level of the first jhana, Our job is to make sure that all of the thoughts that we have are pure, wholesome, and established in the here now. For instance, you can mold the Dhamma, or you can watch what's going on in the body or watch these feelings. But your main job is to make sure that anything that arises, you're going to push it out. You're going to keep the mind clear because you like it so much. This is real sukha.
This is something I've been working with just recently, is that I don't need any motivation to do this other than that I prefer it.
Yes, it's lovely. It's really, really, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And that feels like it's part of being a winner, is just that I get to choose. I don't need any reason.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need anyone's permission. How do I prefer the mind? And let's do that.
Yes, and that's exactly part of one's right overall view is that you do have the choice about how you're going to feel.
Mm.
And this is the way that we work with that sukha coming from the rapture, which comes from the gladdening of the mind and the success of being able to see the mind wandering away from your object of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the process now, what we've actually been doing is that we've been adding these features to the process of anapanasati. But basically, by adding these features, what we've done is we've layered the teaching of Paticca Samuppada right over anapanasati so that they become one practice.
Powerful shit, Dhammarato.
Yes, it is. And that I look forward to hearing more about what's happening with this. But this is something that I want to point out to you, is that this Vedana and this Sita are actually part of what you would call the mind, that the mind is fairly complex. The mind has consciousness, it's got perception, it's got this memory bank, it's got this projectional way of looking at things internally. Then it's got this powerful impact that it has, followed then by feelings. So all of this stuff is happening before even feelings arise.
Mm-hmm.
And many times the feelings, then what arises with the feelings is a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sooner that we can catch this stuff, the better. And the way that we want to do is we want to sit in this state, in that first jhana of being in that state of sukha, satisfied with this moment. I like it like it is. Any change, I'm going to note it. Any thoughts come up, there you are, I see you, out. Any feelings that arise, there you are, I see you, out. And we dwell in this state of being perfectly content with the way things are in the mind in this moment. And so this is the way that we begin to practice this sukha, is back to the way that I've been telling you all along, but now we're going to make sure that we're actually going to get that hit of I really am successful. I really can do this.
Mm-hmm.
This is something. And that instead of, you see, the way that the real world is set up, because most of us feel like losers anyway, is that this rapture for most people winds up being a really, really big kahuna that only happens once every 6 months or once a year or not very often.
Yeah.
What we're going to be doing is we're going to be practicing this thing all a dozen times a day.
Moment by moment.
Exactly. Whenever we can think of it, we're going to start oh, I am the best winner. I am the best. Now, when I say it like that, I'm only doing it in the sense of how to describe the intensity of the feeling. And when I'm putting a lot of emphasis on self, the thought of self doesn't arise much.
Mm-hmm.
If much more, in fact, if the sound is there to arise as, that's the sound. but it's the sound of the champion. It's the
Mhm.
sound of basically the roar of the lion, the winner. I've got it. And we want to cultivate that feeling, because that surge of victory then puts us into the next state of being completely satisfied and content.
Mm-hmm.
And this satisfaction, this contentment, this victory, the success, etc., like that, this is all part of the Iddhiyapada that is mentioned in the Anapanasati Sutta, but not well defined. But when you look it up in the Pali Dictionary, all of that stuff is right there in the definition of that Pali word. And that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is very clear to link all of these things together like this.
Incredible.
And so go get some piti. Go get some of that good juice.
I want it.
No, don't want it. Do it.
I said I'm on it.
Oh, you're on it. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right. That's an important point, because see, people want the benefits of meditation.
Well, if
And
you
by
want
wanting something, and then you want it, and that very wanting is suffering, because you see that you're doing without. This is not something that you want to do. This is something that you do with gusto.
Yeah. And you can only want something you don't have.
Exactly.
So as long as you want it, you don't have it.
Exactly. So stop wanting it and just do it. That's the whole quality of this.
Great. I'm going to take that with me.
All right.
So I have to go.
Okay.
This has been amazing. I'm going to watch the video again, and I'm going to look forward to hearing you describe this to other students too.
Excellent, Daddy. We'll see you later.
Great. Bye, guys.
Bye. So.
Well, Wayne, how's it going?
It's going good. I went to Arizona, Sedona last week. So I didn't have a chance to call. I was on a vacation. Yeah, but things are going good. I've kept up with my meditation practice pretty diligently. I've been dealing with some big emotions coming up during the meditation practice, but I don't feel like it is a negative emotion, but I don't feel like it's impeding on my life, you know.
Actually, you can expect that stuff to come up. In fact, in a way, we invite it to come up.
Yeah,
just like a fox would invite and hope that the rabbit will come out of its hole.
Yeah. So I feel like I've been inviting it now, but I haven't been able to develop joy with it. You know, it's like it's I mean, it's like a sadness, you know, like a
well. Here's the thing:
anger.
that
so
in this way, that what we're talking about is that we need to practice over and over and over again this feeling of joy and satisfaction, so that we rest in that state of being satisfied and liking this present moment, so that when that stuff comes up, we can deal with it. Without the joy and the satisfaction as the base, when that stuff comes up, you just hop on that train and ride along with it.
Yeah. But how do you develop joy when it's taking up 95% of your consciousness, you know, of your body? It's a bodily feeling, it's a mental state. So
basically, with that term that I give out very often is, aha, I caught you. I see that stuff. All right. And by doing that, just by seeing, aha, I see you, you're actually separating yourself from it. And that's an important quality, that you are not those feelings.
Yeah.
That those feelings are just a bunch of crap out of the past, and you've ignorantly jumped on that train and rode along with those feelings, but now you say no.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when I do see it, so I'll go like, or I'll have the attitude of a aha attitude, and then
Yeah, I see that stuff.
it stay okay. So say it stays there because it does stay there for a long time. Do I investigate it? Like,
Actually, what you're going to do instead is to go back to the with that feeling of aha, I see you, as a high point, as an elation, as a really important thing. Not like, oh yeah, I think I see it. No, it's the way that a cat feels when it comes into the room and it detects that there's a mouse in the room. What does that cat do? It changes its entire posture, and everything about that cat changes. Right
yeah,
now, it's on full alert, and
mm-hmm.
it's got one intention, and that is to catch that mouse. Why? Because he's seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that's the kind of quality that you're going to begin to have, is that quality that that cat has, and that quality is that now that I've seen that mouse, he is mine. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way that we're going to have it. That's the rapture. That's in fact the winner's attitude about how I can see that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you
Okay.
settle down into the satisfaction that you just got at that time, with kind of the mentality, come on again. I'm waiting on you this time, buddy. Just dare raise your ugly head and I'm going to whap you. Okay, so this is now I'm using very strong language because we're trying to describe a mental process
Mm-hmm.
of where you begin to really take over your life. What is the high point of your life? What's the very best thing that could happen to you? What are some of the best things that have ever happened to you in your whole life? I've got quite a list. I'm an old man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So think about it. What's the very best thing that's ever happened to you? And how did you feel at that time? And now you can recognize you can feel that way right now, too.
Yeah. Like by invoking it.
Right, by remembering it, by bringing up the very best that's ever happened.
Yeah.
The very best. What was the high points? The very
I don't.
best thing that ever happened. Sometimes for kids, it's graduating from high school. Other times, it's the first time he got laid. Other
Yeah.
times, it's winning a race with motorbikes.
Well, it's
Here's
probably
one for you: getting first chair in the all-state band.
awesome. Yeah. I don't know. It's probably times like where I felt like a kid, like elation of a kid through the use of mushrooms.
All
So
right.
yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. That people do
Hmm.
feel that elation with a little bit of extra chemical help. But
Yeah.
now we're going to be using Dharma as that boot to
Hmm.
kick us
Yeah.
into that state.
Yeah.
All right. So you
Hmm.
you reflect upon that, you recognize what it is, you go for the very, very best that you've ever had. Remember how good that feels and say, okay, that's how I choose to feel right now.
Mm. Gotcha. So
Make
yeah,
sure that
make
you're
make
combining it with
intentions.
the breath. That's a big, deep breath and a really huge relax out. You could almost say that the in breath is the rapture and the out breath is the sukha.
So you're saying periodically when I'm meditating to take deep breaths like that with like
Every time you can
invoking that.
remember it, that's the period. When do you do that? When you remember to do it.
Oh, but that would be my whole meditation if I remembered it the whole time. So I would just
If
be
if you can do that, good for you.
so like
The
every
question
time
is,
like
can you? Can you?
oh I
Can
don't
you
know.
do?
I've never tried that.
This is all right. This is an excellent way for you to start checking this out.
Okay.
Every time the mind wanders away, you take a right deep breath. Aha! I caught you. This feels really good, and I can take it out breath. Ah, and go into a deep state of everything is okay.
Okay.
Everything is good in
So
this moment.
So in breath is the joy, out breath is the sukha, the satisfaction.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you do that again. You can work with the breath like that. Sukha, piti, or piti sukha, like that. You can remember it that way. But the important thing about the sukha is that's a place for the guard to be on guard. Like the dogs that are, when they're on asleep on the porch here. No, they're not. They've got that ear cocked.
Yeah.
They're on guard. Okay. So this is the point of guarding. And what we're going to be guarding for, one, is for the mind to wander away. Number two, if the mind has thoughts, what are they? Are they for the past or the future? Or are they thoughts about right now?
Yeah.
And so you begin to keep your mind focused on basically the Dhamma and what's happening right now, with the intention of being in a state of joy, being in a state of satisfaction, not needing to become excited, because we know how to do that.
Yeah. So it'd be like an attention and awareness type of thing, right? Like, would it be like my awareness or my attention would be on the invoking the joy and sukha, and then my awareness would be like on my bodily emotions during the moment, and
Right. That would
thoughts and
be
things like
once
that.
you get into a state of satisfaction and in a steady state. That's when we really want to put the investigation to work, to put on guard. The state that the cat is in when the cat knows the mouse is in the room.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So is it even worth it? So say if I can't invoke that, like I'm not having success, I just have the intention to invoke, like for the joy and the pity. Is that still worthwhile? Just having the intention, even if it's not bringing up, say, the feeling.
no, you could actually bring up the feelings. That's the whole point, to gladden the mind. Okay, you can
Oh, okay.
actually think of it as that the rapture is kind of like a chuckle.
Yeah.
Start laughing. In fact, laugh your way through your sitting meditation. Every time you can think of it, have a little laugh.
But it's weird because when I do that, like I've had this intention in the past, but it's weird because anytime I do that, it's like it brings up the opposite emotion. Like even if I do meditation or something, it'll like bring up, it'll bring up sadness or
It
the
does.
pity.
That's the whole point. Can you play whack-a-mole with that stuff?
Okay.
Because the old
Okay.
habits
Okay.
want to come up. The old habits want to do that. That's exactly right. Don't let
Oh,
them
I
take
see.
control. That's the whole point of watching that stuff, those mental
Oh, okay.
formations. They're going to come up.
Okay, so as soon as I see it coming up again, I guess I try to make a cycle of, okay, joy from it coming up.
And then, aha, I see you. That's the
I
whole
see.
point. That, and then there you start the cycle of gladdening the mind, having right effort, coming back to the state of elation that you can do this practice, that you're successful at it, and then you settle down with the next breath into a state of sukha, into the state of satisfaction, where you begin to watch again. You just saw it again. And now you're beginning to say, oh no, I can do this. See what happened when you were talking about a moment ago, where you were saying that when that old stuff would come up, you just let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just watch it and I don't know, try to be, I guess I would investigate it of some sorts, but I didn't do the joy thing because I don't know, I've had such problems with cultivating, like recent, like maybe since I've started.
And part of that has to do with the fact that something deep inside is saying you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know that. Start watching that part too. The
mhm.
part that says you do not deserve the joy. Now, let me tell you something you already know, so I'm not telling you anything new. And that
Mhm.
is that it's got nothing to do with whether you deserve it or not. It has to do with whether you can do it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it really is. And that's the whole point about this, is developing and cultivating that feeling of, yes, I can do this. Whether I've
Mm-hmm.
got permission to or not is irrelevant.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll
And
start developing.
the more you practice this and are successful at it, the more it will eradicate the doubt. The
Mm-hmm.
quality that we're talking about is in the Pali is shraddha, and that the word is wrongly translated as faith. But the Christians have already got that word; they can keep it. Faith is not what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Shraddha is confidence, and confidence is built upon success. So once
Yeah.
you begin to see that you do not have to follow those bad feelings when they arise, then the next time, the second time it happens, you can count on the success of having not done it the first time. And so now you're beginning to do it over and over and over again. Every time those old bad feelings arise, you can say, aha, caught you.
So, but isn't that because I don't know? I guess the reason it throws me off is because I've always heard to watch him to like, and doing otherwise would be spiritual bypassing.
Okay,
So
let's go do some spiritual bypassing because we've got a
okay,
real clog there.
yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So you're saying go ahead and bypass it for now?
Yes. Okay. Another way of looking at it is that people talk about it in the sense of choiceless awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the point of having choiceless awareness? If you're going to have awareness, if you can see a freight train coming, but you're not supposed to get out of the way of it, what's the point of seeing it coming?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That, oh no, anapanasati is for the practice of it so that you can make wise choices moment to
Mm-hmm.
moment so that you can avoid suffering.
Yeah,
And so
but
when those bad feelings arise, watch them, but don't grab hold of them or let them control you.
that'll eventually uproot them, like the very source of it.
Give them no effort or give them no energy.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about it with analogies like uprooting it, but basically, the way that I would look at it is that you can imagine that all of your past is like a boiling, bubbling, open sewer. And everything, every day, everything that happens to you, you just kind of throw into that boiling, bubbling old sewer.
Oh yeah.
And what we're going to do is a new way of doing it. We're going to say, oh no, we're not going to be using that old sewer anymore. We're going to stop dealing with the past. We're going to stop stirring the stuff up. And we're going to stay out of the past, almost as if we're paving uh, a layer of at least wisdom so that the new stuff that we put in will stay on the top and can be dealt with as new stuff while the old stuff dies. That, you know what a sewer does,
Mm-hmm.
that
What?
it will go into compost. As the
Yeah.
water seeps out of it, the old bad stuff will just rot down to the bottom of it and it becomes compost. What keeps it sewage is all the new stuff mixing
Mm-hmm.
in with the old stuff. So we're going to start drawing a line of staying out of the past mentally as best we can. So that
Mm-hmm.
when this stuff bubbles up from the past, we can cut that off and say, no, no, you're not coming up. You're going to stay
Mm.
down there. We're going to stay out of the past. And if you'll notice during the day, how much of your thought pattern has to do with things that have already happened, that you're in the past quite a lot.
Yeah.
The
A lot.
question is, can you recognize that the mind is in the past and take that championship stand to say, okay, out of here, out of here,
Yeah. Okay.
and start dealing more and more and more with the present moment because we've got the tools to do that. We've got the rapture, we've got the sukha, we've got the investigation to start watching to make sure that that stuff doesn't come up.
Gotcha. Okay. And do you think there's much use to like as a supplement. So, do you think there's much use to psychiatry, like to therapy?
Let's leave that for an entire different discussion. But I will say that the business model is problematic.
Mm-hmm.
The pay-as-you-go client and psychiatrist model is problematic from the beginning, to where the relationship with the Dhamma, because everything is freely given and everything is done on a friendly basis, that there is no one-up, one-down relationship. And in fact, my job is to invite you up.
Mm-hmm.
The psychiatrist's job is to keep you down.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because he's making money off of you in that position.
Yeah.
So he wants to maintain and keep you as a client.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
To where I want graduates. I want,
Yeah.
I want those guys to come out and say, okay, now I've got the Dhamma. Now I can go out and do something with it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And so that's why it's always freely given.
Yeah.
Now, I have more faith in modern neuroscience than I do in psychology and psychiatry. And I don't want to get into the war between psychologists and psychiatrists, but basically, the psychologists are the ones who have to deal with people, and the psychiatrists are the ones who have to deal with the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh. Psychiatrist deal with you say the psychiatrist deals with the meds, right? The
The
pharmaceuticals.
psychiatrists are the ones who do the
Yeah.
meds, and the psychologists have to do it without the meds because they don't have the legal job. They don't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the legal kahunas to dispense medicine. That causes an enormous conflict between those two organizations. For instance,
Okay,
the
yeah.
psychiatrist can get insurance, but the psychologist can't get the insurance companies to pay for the psychologist.
Yeah, that's a mess.
It's a real mess. As an industry, it's a real mess. And the worst part of it is that with that mess that's happened within the model, the business model, means that
Mm-hmm.
it's ineffective. The
Yeah.
meditation has so it doesn't matter that everything that the psychiatrists and the psychologists know about psychology is true. The problem is that it's not helping people.
Mm-hmm. That's truth.
But I use psychology a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm teaching the Dharma. I don't teach psychology or be in the position of a psychologist. I'm in the position of being a Kalyametta, a friend in the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, one last question, and then I'll let you go. But
All right.
because I've been kind of dealing with some of this stuff, but so will waking up, like when you wake up, does that purify some of your past garbage, or is that a
Let us
separate
say
process?
yes, but not a whole lot. That
Mm-hmm.
basically it's a new habit because the old habit is to just let the old way of doing things operate on an ordinary level. In other words, we're not making choices because we're not seeing the choices because we're on automatic pilot basically, or
Yeah.
operating at an instinctual level. But wakey means, hey, stop and recognize what's going on. And that
Mm-hmm.
the first thing that we do is we put almost an artificial uh, um, object there. And that artificial object is the breath. It winds up not being artificial at all. If you stop breathing, you die. That's how important it is.
Yeah.
And it's number one on this, that long, deep breath in and out is the very first lesson of Anapanasati. That's how important it is that long, deep breath. That we need to keep practicing that long, deep breath. Um, that the human brain I just saw an article on this that the human brain developed the way that it did because of our cooked food. That if we ate raw, the humans really couldn't survive the way that animals do. But because we've eaten cooked food, that gives the human brain the development that it needs to use as much effort, or excuse me, to use as much energy that it does. That literally, there's so much about that. But most of the energy that, or let us say, most of the heat that comes off the body comes out of the head.
Yeah.
All right, so that shows how important then the brain is. And if the brain is not getting enough oxygen, then it will go into shutdown or survival mode. And that survival mode is the reptilian brain in the back. That's why people are mostly working out of their instincts, out of their reptilian brain. And the whole quality of the teaching of the Buddha is to wake up and start using the most human part of the mind. We want to take a deep breath and get it oxygenated and get it just really happy and everything like that, so we can settle down into having the right work to do, is to keep that reptilian brain out of the picture.
So we do that by taking conscious breath, like conscious deep breaths.
Conscious deep breaths, conscious happy deep breaths, satisfying deep breaths, the very best of deep breaths. The deepest breath that the guy takes just as he finishes the 100-yard dash.
Yeah. And that'll start coming naturally later, right? Once you start
practicing it, it will become more and more natural. But in the beginning, it takes effort. That's why right effort is part of the path, is to remember to do this and to take the effort that it takes to do it. But your benefit of doing that is immediate.
Okay, cool.
So 50 all the way, yay!
All right, yeah. All right, so my practice right now will just to be for conscious breaths, right? Like deep when I remember, and then invoke the joy, the sukha, and and then come back to that when I'm
whenever the mind wanders away, and you can catch it, you come back.
Okay, that sounds awesome. All right, thanks, Dhammarato.
Good to see you, Wayne. Bye-bye.
Good to see you. Bye.